I'm Jason Nelson. I'm a digital artist, a lecturer at Griffith University, the Queensland College of Art, but I'm also an artist in resident here at the Queensland State Archives. I've spent the last 4 or 5 months making interactive art, digital poetry, interactive narratives, video art from the collections here at the State Archives. And not just the documents, not just the maps, not just old pictures I would find, letters and notes, but also using old machines, using things I found in their warehouse. So the work behind me is our work I created from a library card catalog cabinet. The story basically is that when I first became an artist in resident here at the Queensland State Archives, they took me into this giant storeroom, a big warehouse room filled with all these things that were not being used anymore, right? Computers have replaced the card catalog. And I was just fascinated again by this old device that was the heart of any collection. This is how you found everything. This was where all the knowledge was contained. And you would have to sort of explore these cards. And people obviously spent thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of hours collecting all these cards and organizing everything. And so the fact that they were disappearing kind of inspired me. It made me want to rethink the cabinet into some type of interactive artwork. So what I've done is the interface is the cabinet. You pull the drawers out, you push them in, and that drives the content. The content is actually a poetic interpretation of an old Brisbane map. And so each of the drawers represents a different point on the map. So I look at these old maps and you can sort of see little markings, hand-drawn things, labels on these old maps. And to me, that inspired little narratives, little stories. You know, so for example, you might have one where you have an asylum next to a rifle range, which is kind of a strange contrast. And so I would write these little poetic elements. And to get those, you basically pull the drawers out. It makes a bit of music, so it also operates as a musical instrument in some ways, but it's also a way of driving poetic content. And beckons back to that notion that, again, these card catalogs were the primary way that people explored collections, explored libraries. And hopefully I'm kind of bringing it back to life. You know, one of my fascinations with a lot of the materials in the archives are just the beauty of the documents themselves. I mean, I'm an artist, I'm a digital poet, I'm not necessarily a historian or a scholar, and so I have a fascination just with the textures and the colors, those strange little bits that you would find on documents. And so these documents all detail the story, but the documents themselves are quite beautiful. Like I love these handwritten elements and the different colors and the layering of content. This work is very similar to that, but obviously a different mode of interactivity in terms of this generates objects as opposed to a kaleidoscope. And this one, I actually loved diagrams. I love the fact that in the documents and in the archives, you can find all these old maps and you can find all these old diagrams of buildings and engineering plans. I've always loved the narrative that's inherent in these kind of drawings. But you can tell a lot about the language they use. I mean, these are very much telling a story. Even if you just look right here, for example, and it says cell, kitchen, constable. I mean, you know, that's a narrative there, right? Like, what do we emphasize? How does that differ now? Sadly enough, I doubt most of the police station nowadays is a bedroom and a kitchen and a bedroom and just a few cells. It's probably mostly cells, right? And so it changes pretty dramatically. You also have Goodna's Mental Hospital, which I find kind of fascinating because they're using this kind of Art Deco font, you know, and it's this beautiful, it's a beautiful sort of title for a place that, you know, inherently is kind of disturbing. The notion of these was, you know, I remember as a kid playing around with these in libraries or, you know, other collections, and I was always fascinated by them. They're like almost like little movie theaters in a way. So This is the old microfilm reader. So normally you would have a little film in here and you would cycle through it and you'd read an old newspaper or what have you. And I love the fact that this narrowed it down. It became a small little world. And so this becomes a small arcade for a video artwork I made using old housing photos that they had collected. So these are houses from the 50s and the 60s. I don't know, they captured these sort of neighborhoods. They captured the life of these houses in southeast Queensland. And in particular, I love the little comments they would make next to these houses, trying to sort of describe them in the best way they could in terms of what they meant to the people at the time. And on the other side is the inside of the houses. A different photo set, different collection, but again, something that really inspired me. And I love the fact that people can just sit here and they can just kind of watch these little video artworks contained within this microfilm medium. One of the things I love about this work is that on the wall is actually an old work table. So we chopped the legs off a table and put it on the wall because it was such a beautiful surface. And in fact, one of the things you'll find with a lot of these projectors is that while they're nice interactive projectors, the texture doesn't feel good. It doesn't actually feel good to interact with it. Whereas this wall surface, these tables are precisely designed to have a really tactile and enjoyable sort of interactive surface. This is very much breaking apart this notion of searching through images. And I just love even this vision right here. The way you can sort of see the smaller and smaller versions of these documents. And it emphasizes, here's what I'm looking at, but now as I look at something else, I can still see connections between the documents. But in your memory, in your artistic association, the documents are getting smaller and smaller. And that's very much how a lot of us search through these kind of archives. I created a series of interactive digital artworks that utilize documents from the archives, basically plunging into boxes and folders and files and online directories and all number of different sort of ways of engaging with the content within the archives, but then also thinking about some of the physicality of the archives, right? Looking at some of these old microfilm machines, looking at these old work tables and rethinking them, rethinking card catalogs, and just trying to find a way of connecting, which is quite complicated programming, quite complicated generative video art, with some of these older ways that we used to actually engage with the content from a giant repository like this. And as a digital poet, I kind of loved making this because of the fact that it gave me a chance to sort of pull out those poetic moments, those narrative moments, those artistic moments that I found in the documents. And again, I've probably said this before, but I'm not a historian. I'm not necessarily a scholar, but that doesn't matter. And I think that's what the archives really want to do, is they want to open it up to more people. To say, well, look, come explore the kind of things that we have, because we want you to find your own narratives. We want to find your own poetic moments, whether it's the colors of the documents, whether it's strange handwritten notes, whether it's narratives and poetic elements you find on maps. I think it's important that people, engage with that stuff and actually explore the collection for themselves. And then maybe in process make some odd digital artwork like I've made.